Hello again. Now, I was gonna do this on my sword, but that kind of broke as I was bringing it out to the shed, which is where I am recording these, so instead, it's a rake, but it's very long, and it has this kind of head, and that's good enough for what I'm going for. Compared to me, it's maybe taller than me, which means it's at least over 5'8", maybe 5'9", approaching that. Point is, it's tall, and a tall weapon like this with a pole, well, at least what mimics a pole, what mimics a butt spike, and what mimics a head. That's a pole arm. Not every pole arm has a butt spike. This also doesn't. This is just like fabric, but it gets the point across. It highlights the main things: pole, head, butt spike. And at least for halberds, which is the first thing I'll think of when it comes to pole arms, they don't have a butt spike, at least usually. What they do have is a axe, a spike on the top, and a spike on the back. Sometimes it can be another spike, or what am I saying? Another axe. Apologies. And halberds are, if you get into history of most kinds, at least medieval, just Europe in general, halberds are very popular. They are, in my opinion, probably the best weapon for medieval times and such, in terms of like factoring in price and how long it takes to learn to use it, because it's a pole arm. You can't really go wrong with them, because how do you use a pole arm? You do this. Uh, Sometimes you do a bit of that or a bit of that. There isn't much to pole arm fighting, especially compared to something like a sword, especially a bow or any kind of ranged weaponry at all. A pole arm is simple. It's almost like a mace, but maces, you don't have to worry about edge alignment. At least with some pole arms, you do. Bad example, because this doesn't have anything. If you were to swing this at someone, you could go like that, like hit with these spikes, which are heavily fucked up. That's my bad. I've been hitting stuff with it over the last few years, if you can guess. Now, I would try and hit with this part right here, or this part, because all the force is going to get concentrated over a smaller area. If there's only one spike on the top, the same effect would be done, if not better. Where's my dog? Anyway, hitting here would simulate a spike, just a very, very, very blunt spike, but a spike is a spike. You know, it gets the job done. Now, to go over polearm fighting, there are two real things I think of. One would be quarter stave, which is like, imagine a spear without the pointy bit. It's just a stick, really. Like, it's just a pole, a wooden pole. And quarter stave is essentially a practice pole arm. It is a weapon on its own, but you know, it's just a pole. But the fundamentals of a quarter stave apply to most pole arms. You can thrust ineffectively, but you can thrust. What you want to do with a quarter stave is swing like that. And although you can do that with a pole arm, usually you'd want a more balanced grip, at least if you're going for cuts or plan to use the butt spike at all. This kind of stance that I'm doing is a very well-rounded one. It allows you to hit with the butt spike, thrust, swing down, thrust. You can shove with the shaft, which I want to go over. Shoving with the shaft, first thing first, it's very simple. All you do is you just grab it securely and you either shove with this or maybe this, but when I think of shoving with a polearm, I think of this area. Just shove like that. Now that's useful for mainly just getting your opponent off your ass, because the main weakness of a polearm like this is it's long, which is its main benefit too, but there's only a certain amount of distance that I can recoil back, and especially if I have just run the polearm, I can't retract this in time for a block, and if I'm lucky I can pull back to do a thrust, but you have to be quick, and if you're mid-swing, it can be a bit hard. If your opponent has a smaller weapon like a sword or a dagger or even an axe, it can be very easy to just close the distance and kill you, because polearms, although they're not heavy, there is basically no such thing as a heavy weapon, at least if it's a melee one. It is the balance that makes it slow. For a sword, the weight would be here. For polearm, the weight is here, all in the head, because that's where the most mass is, that's where all the metal is. The butt spike can have a bit of mass, but it's not nearly enough to counteract the weight on this end, so holding it like this is very hard with one hand, if not impossible, like how it is for me, to be fair. I'm a twink, I'm not that strong, but even just two hands, it's not easy, and that's the main point. When you swing with a polearm, your hand slides down the haft. Maybe you can see it there. It slides down to give you extra reach, power, and just overall, it's how you swing with most poled weapons like axes. You want to gain leverage. That's the main point of this lawn pole, and having something like a spike or a hammer or an axe on the end. Now, as I said, it makes it very easy to just close the gap if you miss or they deflect your strike. It can be very easy to punish you for missing. But going back to the shove, if you do miss, if you can manage to get your position like this, you can shove them back, which either allows you time to stab, or if you are very lucky, you can thrust. Well, not thrust, cut. My apologies. Point is, it's either a Hail Mary move that you do out of desperation, because you're gonna die, or it can be a grappling technique. Now, I haven't done grappling with a weapon before. I've only done grappling with kids on the street. I wouldn't be well experienced with weapon-based fighting as a whole anyway. I'm a nerd. That's all I am. But grappling is very common with a polearm. I'm not gonna say entirely with something like a halberd, which I'm gonna pretend this is. With a quarter stave, with a spear, with pretty much any poled weapon, it's not common. I don't have the weapon, but something like this is a much smaller rake. It's nowhere near the same height as the other one. Like, I can just compare them right now. Halberd, poleaxe. A poleaxe is like a halberd. It's a very similar concept, except a poleaxe always has a butt spike on the end, has a long pole, nowhere near as long as a halberd on average, and it has the head. Usually, the head will either be an axe, a spike, or a hammer. Sometimes it can be axe, spike, spike. Other times it can be spike, axe, axe, spike, spike, hammer. It's there's no rules dictating what can or cannot be on the head of a poleaxe or any polearm in general. For poleaxe specifically, it's quite common to not actually have an axe on the poleaxe, and axe doesn't mean the same thing as it did hundreds of years ago. It actually meant something else, but I don't know what it means. I never looked into it. Either way, a poleaxe, a much smaller polearm, is much more used to grappling. It is a bit better suited for it, because a poleaxe is a knightly weapon. It can be called a knightly poleaxe, actually, because it's not cheap. It's very expensive on occasion, especially today. You cannot get a good one unless it's like €1,000, which is expensive, and you still have to put it together. But anyway, that's a lot of non-necessary yap. Anyway, poleaxes are a polearm, a very short polearm compared to other things like halberd, but the concept is still the same. You strike either with the axe or the spike, or you thrust with spike on top or butt spike. The butt spike is very fundamental for poleaxe fighting. If you can't use the butt spike, you don't know how to use it at all. If the main tool of the poleaxe is the butt spike, nothing on top. A common stance for poleaxes would be something like this. Now this stance looks a bit silly, I will admit. The whole point of it is the butt spike. You have good control, and you can really drive it into someone's head, or maybe you want to direct their weapon away. I wish my English would behave today, but I'm autistic. Forgive me. Anyway, the butt spike is a fundamental of poleaxe combat, and what can I say? If you can't do this, you can't use a poleaxe. This stance in particular is good for it just because it really highlights the importance of the butt spike. And although this is literally behind me, it's meant to be behind you, maybe just above you if you're really goofy. You can also hold it down here, but upward strikes aren't well known unless it's a sword. Axes aren't very good at upward strikes because just the weight, the balance of the weapon is not very suited to upward strikes, but you can do it. There's nothing stopping you. As long as the butt spike is in play, you're not really doing anything wrong. Of course, you can actually hold a polearm of any kind like this. You don't want to hold it like this if you're blocking from this side. You want to switch your grip to do this. It's not like a sword where your left hand is always on the bottom, your right hand is always on the top. That's how you use a sword. Poleaxe, you're always swapping your hands and where they are in the polearm. You always want to be sliding them up and down for either blocking or attacking. Always moving which hand is the dominant hand. In my left side here, my dominant hand would be the left hand. For my right side, it's the right hand. Now, what else to say? You can tell I don't have a script. I'm just a big yapper, if you couldn't tell. Actually, I have no idea. What can I say? This is why you come with scripts. That's why I'm never gonna be a big YouTuber. Could go over axe. Cause why not? I'm bored. Axes are cool. I own an axe. Bear in mind, it is not a combat axe. It is a felon axe. Well, actually, it's not a felon axe. It's a woodcutting axe. You can tell because it's hefty. It's not thin really. It does thin, like it does get very thin, but if you use this thing on a tree, you'll know what I'm saying. Especially because just the length of it, you're meant to just drive down, really split logs very easily. It is a wedge, after all, but I'm just gonna pretend this is a combat axe, like a Dane axe. This is tiny. It's nowhere near as big as the rakes I own. Like, just to compare them, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's not that long. It's much shorter than the small rake, and it's especially shorter than the tall rake. If I was to guess just how tall this would 3 foot, 2 foot maybe. It is not tall at all, but the point can be given. With an axe, you slide your hand down as you swing it, so by the time you've finished your swing, your hand is all the way at the bottom before you hit your target. That gives you the most leverage, which in turn means power, technically speed, because although that's fast, that's also fast. It's different philosophies. The power is the main thing. The reach is another. The reach you gain from just doing this makes up for the lack of reach this has, because I wouldn't say it's smaller than a sword, but if you're fighting a sword with this, at least the length of this, you're going to have a hard time, because this is not meant for fighting at all, obviously. But even if it was, it would be questionable. Also realizing turn on light. That doesn't do anything. My bad. Either way, we can go over a concept here. Axe, hammer. Now, hammers in combat aren't too useful, especially the further back in history you go, like in Viking era times. I don't know when that is, maybe 900 AD. I wouldn't know timelines very well. I'm more of the weapon and armor guy than the historian. But in Viking times, hammers were pretty much never seen, if at all. I don't see any references to hammers anywhere. But axes were quite common, actually. Usually it'd be a one-handed axe, more like this length or this length, and you'd have a shield with that, a center grip shield. And what this would do would be counteracting the weakness of an axe. An axe is a very powerful cutting weapon. Out of all the things I would want to get hit by, Kanabo and axe are very high on the list. Axe would probably be the most deadly thing you can get hit by. Swords are powerful, but an axe, oh, swing like that towards maybe here on the body, you're gonna die. It's over. If it's a sharp axe, you're either gonna be cut almost in half, or you're gonna be bleeding, losing, having a lot of your organs damaged. It's not pretty. An axe's power, reach, sometimes, it's mostly power, but the main benefit of an axe over something like a Kanabo is an axe isn't really unwieldy. I can swing this. If the handle was shorter, it'd be easier, but if I swing it like that, I can swing it fairly fast, not a good technique or anything, but if I was to miss, I can come back around, and not very slowly. And that makes it not useless. Shocking, I know. Anyway, an axe main weakness is its defensive ability. All the weight is here, making it very slow. Holding it out at the very end is very hard. I can only do it for a few seconds with two hands. It's very hard still. That's why when you swing and you pull back, your hand slides up the shaft closer to the head. That's why techniques such as holding it like this to punch your opponent in grappling distance is a thing. That's why you can choke up on the handle to swing it as almost a smaller axe. And that's why you can use the end of it. Like a poleaxe, never underestimate the end of a pole. Because of leverage, it actually does hurt. Like, I don't want to get hit by an actual force. Even though this is actually made of rubber, it would still hurt like a bitch. If I was to hold it up here and went like that, it would hurt. Especially if it's made out of wood. If it's made out of metal, you're gonna have serious problems. But one thing that will always hurt, depending on the, even if the material is made of rubber or something, is thrusting, especially at the face. If this was to poke you on either like the main area of the face, I know I'm black right now, you can't see me very well, but particularly around the eyes and the nose, if you were to get thrusted in there, it would hurt like a bitch mainly, but it would be very disorienting. It would be just very painful in general, and if you're very unlucky, it could cause you to just drop your weapon. And in a fight, if you drop your weapon, you most likely died, because I can't say the obvious, can I? What's better in a fight, no weapon or a weapon? Against the guy with a weapon. Anyway, with axes, there is a hammer on, usually. And in Viking times, it wasn't that useful. Helmets are the main reason you'd use a blunt weapon in combat, at least before, like, advanced suits of armor that knights would have. Because up until very late century knights, like 16th century, 15th, armor wasn't that advanced. You could still get away with just bringing an axe. You didn't have to rely on the hammer end or just anything that does blunt damage over cutting damage. Because against a helmet, you're not aiming to cause no damage with a helmet. You're trying to prevent getting brain damage or skull fractures. Concussions are not able to be stopped by any helmet, even today. At least as far as I know. You cannot stop whiplash. If this was to hit me here, my head would jolt this way. If that goes fast enough, that can break my neck. It can cause severe damage to the nerves. It can really hurt. For one, if you've ever been in a car crash, which I doubt you have, but if you have, the whiplash is like that, but on a very concentrated force, swung by a warrior at close to 60% of their strength at least. Point is, it's not nice to be hit by a hammer or anything, and a helmet won't stop the damage. It's only going to stop skull fractures, brain hemorrhaging, maybe. You gotta be lucky. The main area to protect on a body is the head, obviously. That's why helmets are quite possibly the most important part to protect. The head is the most important part to protect. That's why helmets are the most important piece of armor. Then it would be your chest, like this area in general is very vital, contains all of your major organs. After that, it would probably be like your stomach area. Then it'd be your arms, because if you lose an arm in combat and this is your weapon, good luck fighting. You kind of want two hands for something like this. If you have something like an axe, a very small axe, or a sword, a one-handed one, you can get away with it. But if you're using a one-handed weapon, you probably wanted a shield with that. You probably had a shield with that. Makes me wonder how you lost the arm if you had a shield, but you know what I mean. Point is, an axe has a hammer end. A lot of polearms do. And the hammer end on a weapon like this is mainly just used for armor. Now, that's not to say the axe end is useless against armor. It's actually really good. If it's a well-made axe back then, in like olden times, against not that thick armor, maybe like, I don't know, maybe a van brace or very early plate, it would go through. If it's chainmail, it's either gonna break through, or it's gonna not break the chainmail, but it's gonna break everything it was covering. So your ribs, your spine, if you're unlucky, your shoulders, anything your chainmail covered, it will not protect you against that. You can never get hit by that unless you're in full plate with some cloth material under your armor, just to protect against blunt strikes. Something very padded. I forget the name somehow. This is my whole hobby. You'd think I noticed, but nope, I don't. Somehow. Why am I doing this? Anyway, point is, armor is the name of the game when it comes to hammers. But the axe, it can also do work. It can put in serious work against armor. The lighter the armor is, the better. If it's a cloth armor, it doesn't care. You gotta have either a really dull axe or several layers of something hard, but also a cloth. I don't know how much layers that would be, how thick it would have to be just to protect against a single strike from a blunt, maybe just dull axe. It would be a lot, that's for sure. Chainmail, it would, if it's a well-made chainmail or not a sharp axe, it probably wouldn't break the chainmail, but it would break under you. If you're wearing plate, if it's too thin, it will still damage you, obviously. But if you're very unlucky and it's thin, it might break through, which is quite bad, seeing as if you're wearing a thin plate, you probably aren't wearing the strongest chainmail, if any at all. You probably will have something like a gambeson, which is a cloth armor I forgot about. That would be nice to wear under plate, but it's a cloth material. If it's a relatively, not dull axe, it would go through anyway. But I think I've rambled enough about that. Now, this doesn't have a spike on the top. Obviously, this is a woodcut axe. It doesn't need a spike. So, I don't really have an example to show. I'm just going to go back to the rake. Let's just pretend. This is the spike now. This is not book spike. This is the spike. If you were doing spear combat, you either hold it like this, mainly. There's obviously different positions. You cannot generalize fighting, especially fighting with melee weapons, because there's just so much factors to include. Where's your opponent? Where are you? High ground, low ground, armor. Don't even get me started on weapon choice. the amount of possibilities is endless. So, in general, it's either going to be a spread stance, just so you can quickly but powerfully put a lot of force into your step and your thrust all at once. Remember, you thrust by stepping in and going like that. You can actually just not do that. You can just step in if you want to, but you're better off just doing both. Either way, or you could do it like this. Very low down. This gives you the most reach. You will have a hard time getting to me if you're using something like a sword or an axe. Even some other polearms. If the spear is long enough, then you can't really do anything except try and close the gap. And that's the main weakness of polearms, and it is with spears. It is with axes too. Basically, any weapon that isn't a sword or a dagger, can't have them get too close. Even with a sword, you can't have them get too close to you, because there's only so far you can reach back towards your body and still be able to swing. This is as far as I can go. My ribs are in the way. I cannot strike anymore. So, the whole name of the game with a spike, any kind, is distance. Unless you're operating with a small weapon with a spike on it, maybe a katana, which is basically like a boxing glove with a spike on the tip. It makes your punches very deadly. It's like a dagger on your fist. And that doesn't really matter how close they get, because it's your hand that's doing the damage. It's not a weapon. But spikes are mainly for distance. That's why spears are so effective, because you can keep them at bay. You can pretty much make it unable to get close to you by just, just being active. If they go this way, you turn this way. If they go the other way, you turn with them. As long as you are always threatening them, they can't really do anything. Now, sometimes they will hit your spear, which will knock it out of the way, and then they will approach you. And the only real way to prevent that is, if it's gonna hit here, you reach underwards, and then you can thrust back. If that happens, you've probably won the fight, unless they're out of your reach, which in that case, you can still do it either by choking down or, well, choking up really, either choking up, stepping into it, or doing both. That's an effective way of spear fighting, because spears are even more simplistic than something like a mace. Probably. Like, there's a lot of simple weapons if you think about it. Swords and polearms are probably the closest thing to a complicated weapon, but swords are the complicated ones. That's the one with all the skill behind it. A spear is simple. It's like a mace. You only do one thing. With a mace, you hit some, just swing. With a spear, you poke them. Who can poke the better? That's what a spear fight is. If I was to fight you with a spear, maybe a one-handed spear, this would be what I'm doing. You try and knock my spear out of the way. I go under. I go in. You dodge that, or I miss. Then it starts all over again. You thrust at me. I back away. We're back into fair game. It's a neutral position. None of us have the advantage. But I think that's all for today, or at least for now. I don't know what else to talk about. I've already been rambling a lot. If you couldn't tell, this is my passion. I want to talk to people about this stuff. I don't have anyone to talk about this stuff with, so being able to tell myself, really, just talk to the camera while attempting to show off what I know, it's nice. It's not a very good job, I admit. Lighting is, we don't talk about this lighting. I've been black this whole time. I hope you don't mind. Obviously, the weapon choices are unique, to say the least. This is These are not pole arms. This is not a poleaxe or a spear. This is not a halberd. This is not anything. This is just rakes. These are just rakes. And of course, my battle axe over there is a woodman's axe. It's not meant for combat. None of the things in my shed are made for combat. Obviously, it's a shed. I live with my mom. If wartime ever comes, we'll be fine. Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of things I could talk about. Because I'm a nerd. And improvisation is something I'm willing to do. It's something I've been doing the last few years. I've been pretending that that rake, the tall one, was a spear for literal years now, maybe even approaching 5 years. Just pretending that thing's a pole arm and just swinging it around, like trying to get the techniques down. I don't have a sparring partner. It wouldn't be safe to have a sparring partner because of my weapon being not a weapon, and because we don't have gear. But it's the thought that counts, I suppose. There's other things I could talk about, like I could go over something silly like a chainsaw or a hammer. Let's see here. Nothing really to talk about, except I can show you how to use a shovel as a weapon. I can pretend it's a palm axe, but what can I say? I want to ramble. I want to waffle. I'm just bored. And on a day like this, where I'm not feeling too good, it's nice to be able to just talk about my passion, even if it's a bit rambly, very rambly. I do it because at the end of the day, I'm bored. I want to entertain someone. If I'm entertaining someone, I'll be entertaining myself. And, the best way to make yourself feel happy is make someone else feel happy. That's what I've learned over my life. It's worked out for me. Not particularly well sometimes, but, sometimes you just gotta take it on the chest and work your way out of it. Listen to others if you can. Granted, I don't do that so often. Now, usually it's because I have my own way and that works for me, but, this whole being outside right now thing was someone else's idea. I wasn't gonna go outside. At least not now. Maybe I would have later, but I think it's gonna rain soon. Classic Ireland for you, but if it rained, I definitely would have gone out, but feels good. Just talking. I like talking to people, particularly if it's something I know a lot about. But right now I have a camera. Not much confidence to talk over a call or something. Definitely not enough confidence to explain chess to someone, that's for sure. Psychology, it's a hard thing to really talk about because how do you really talk about psychology except saying what you're doing is actually a red flag? Because if you do that, then they can kind of do the same to you. It's a pretty vicious cycle that you don't want to start. Actually, you are a red flag right now. Okay. What can I say? I'm bored. Now, speaking of quarter sticks, actually, I'm Steve. I have a stick. A lengthy stick. It's not a great stick by any means, but hit my pecs. Not that small. Maybe 4 foot something. Maybe 4'5" to 4'10" tall. Either way, it gets the point across. Across. I can either pretend this is a sword, a really bad sword, but a sword nonetheless. Like, it's not great because the balance is equal on this. A sword would be down here, and then the blade would be here. But this is just a wooden pole. It's equal. I can use it like this, or I can use it like that. I can use it like this. It's equal. But for quarter stave, that's perfect because, as far as I know, quarter staves are equally balanced. It's just a stick, but you swing it like that. You want it like this. You don't want it like that. You don't want it like this. You want it like that. You want reach. I can hit my camera from very far away if I wanted to, especially if I go into the thrust properly with good form. I could do it. Quarter staves are not a particularly good weapon by any means. In fact, I don't know if they've ever saw Battlefield use. Maybe as a joke, someone brought a polearm without a head, or they just brought a quarterstaff because why not? They were bored, I guess. They wanted to kill themselves. Suicide is badass. But quarterstaves, not much to say except you can hit. You can do a lot of hitting. It's almost like a mace, but even simpler. Now, it does have good reach. Obviously, it's a stick. It's a long stick. You can thrust. It's good for getting the fundamentals of a spear down, or any polearm for that matter. Because it's a stick. It's a pole. What do you think a polearm is? It's a pole with something on top of it. That's what this is. If I wanted to, I could go over using it like a sword. I don't know how to really do that. Probably can't even hear me, but I don't know how to use it like a sword when it's equally balanced, because that kind of ruins the point. I would have used my actual sword if it didn't break. 400 something euro for something that broke after hitting a block of wood. I hit a twig with it and it broke, snapped in half. I hit a log today and it broke again. I didn't know it was possible. It's probably made from either a very weak steel or iron. It's not meant for being used. I didn't know that at the time though. Only came to that conclusion half an hour ago, unfortunately. A bit too late for salvaging it though. Either way, and the only thing I can do with this is tricks. Right? Not much to go over with it. It's just a stick. What can I say? Be fun to have a second one and play with your friends with it, I guess. You know, just play swords. I enjoy that. How can you tell I'm autistic? What can I say? It's fun. It's just fun to play with sticks or weapons in general. I kind of wish I had a different hobby. Pretty much any hobby. Biking, any kind of sport. Professional gamer, I don't know. Esports pays well, and I hear. HEMA or historical arms and armor, which is my hobby. It wouldn't be very popular, wouldn't be very well known either. It's quite an expensive hobby, especially as far as hobbies goes. It's cheaper than cave diving anyway, that's for sure. Much cheaper than mountaineering or anything like that. You can pay expensive money for a good bike, but when well-made swords and pole arms cost upwards of 400 to over 1,000, sometimes even through 2,000 euro, you question your hobby, then you all the gear you need to spar safely. And that's with safe weapons like plastic swords, LARP swords. You need gear for them too, because it's just too dangerous. Don't even get me started on some like a polearm. It's too dangerous to spar with, really. Unless you use a very soft and flexible pole with a plastic head or a rubber head, it's too dangerous. And that's with safety gear. And that means you have a partner to do it with. And because it's not popular or well known either, not much people really care for it. I wouldn't be surprised if I was the only person in Ireland who had this hobby, because, well, most of the world doesn't have this hobby. Most of the people who do live in Canada or America, because that's the only places big enough to have enough people to have this hobby. Places like China or Russia are too, they're pretty much not well-made countries, so they probably don't really have hobbies of any kind over there, let alone a good one or an expensive one. So that's out of question. India, I don't think they have this stuff too. It's not very popular in England either, I'd imagine. I'd assume there's some there. Fencing is something I've thought about, because it's not the same. Olympic fencing is actually really, really different. It's not really like a- actual historical fighting at all. It's very conservative compared to actual fighting. You just poke each other. Whoever does it first, whoever was milliseconds first, that's the winner. That's not really for me, and even if it was, which it was before, but it isn't now, there's 3 places in Ireland I think that do it. I think 2 of them in the capital, and I don't feel like driving an hour or two every day, every second, third day, just to do a sport I probably won't even like. The gear isn't cheap for that either. Lessons won't be cheap. The only other place I know exists was closed, so that's out of question. Let's just say I don't really have much hobbies apart from historical arms and armor, but that is possibly one of the worst hobbies you can have. Worse than something like cave diving, because at least with cave diving, there's plenty of caves in Ireland. There's a tourist attraction of a cave. Pretty sure you could just sneak your way into that if you wanted to. For me, well, I can't do much. If I'm lucky, I'll pull maybe a partner who also likes this, or someone who can be introduced to this and actually likes the idea of it. But for now, I am single, not ready to mingle, and I have a horrible hobby. Gaming, I wouldn't really consider gaming a hobby. The only games I play is Genshin Impact, obviously. That's the game I play the most. Don't really play any other games except maybe Team Fortress 2, but haven't played a lot of that recently, like in the last 2 weeks at all. I don't play Bloons Tower Defense unless I'm extremely bored. I don't play For Honor anymore because that game I'm just not good at it. But my level in it means I have to be. But that means you can't get back into the game because you're too bad. You're rusty, and everyone else is better than you. So plus I have to relearn everything. That's a slog. So I'm kind of just stuck with Genshin for now. If I'm lucky, I'll make more friends on Genshin. Although I feel bad calling them friends when they're online friends, you know. Friends are friends at the end of the day. Whether you can hug them, talk to them in person, make eye contact with them. If you can talk to them at all, even if it's online, it's something. And I say all that like I don't appreciate my online friends. Not to downplay it, I really do love having online friends. I love some of them too much. They are what makes my world go around. Without them, I'd probably either be very miserable or I just have even less social contact. And that would make me even more boring. And yeah, I can't really get much more boring as I am. I'm not a particularly interesting person as far as people go, especially for 17 years. I don't have stories or achievements of really any kind. I can't say I'm a top 0.77% Jean Lee main. That's pretty your loss. I can't really boast about any achievements because either I don't have any achievements or they're not cool. I'm the best in my year at engineering. That means nothing at the end of the day, because I got that a year ago. I still have 2 more years of school left, so I don't really have much in my life. Yeah, that's about it.